You see, every toxic dynamic, every manipulative relationship is built on one fundamental truth. Power flows toward the person who controls the emotional energy. A narcissist doesn't gain power because they're strong, charismatic, or intelligent. They gain it because they're skilled at extracting emotional energy from others. They create chaos to feed off reaction. They provoke to stay relevant. They manipulate to stay connected. But the moment you stop feeding that cycle, the game collapses. You become the variable they can't control, and that's where everything changes. When you withdraw your energy, you're not just walking away physically. You're severing their psychological lifeline. Think about it. Their sense of identity is constructed through your responses. When they criticize, they expect you to defend. When they guilt trip, they expect you to submit. When they ignore, they expect you to chase. And every single reaction reinforces their sense of superiority. It tells them, I still have power over you. But when you stop reacting, when you step back and breathe instead of respond, they're left with silence, and silence is something a narcissist cannot interpret. It confuses them. It exposes how little power they truly had without your cooperation. What's fascinating from a psychological standpoint is how quickly the balance of energy reverses. The narcissist's entire persona thrives on external validation. Without it, their false self begins to crack. You might see them lash out, shift blame, or suddenly play the victim. It's not genuine emotion, it's survival instinct. They're scrambling to reattach to the source of energy that kept them alive. But if you hold your boundary, if you remain centered in calm detachment, they begin to weaken. You'll notice it. Their words lose impact. Their presence no longer stirs anxiety. That's not coincidence. That's liberation. And here's the deeper truth. Your energy was never ordinary to begin with. That's why they targeted you. They saw light, empathy, compassion, qualities they could never cultivate within themselves. You became their mirror, reflecting back the illusion of wholeness they craved. But mirrors don't belong to the ones who look into them. They belong to the ones who own them. And when you reclaim that mirror, when you stop reflecting their chaos and start reflecting your own strength, they lose not just control, they lose their identity. Most people underestimate how powerful emotional withdrawal really is. They think walking away means indifference. But in reality, it's the highest act of consciousness. It says, I will no longer negotiate my peace to comfort your dysfunction. That's not coldness. That's clarity. It's understanding that your empathy was weaponized against you and choosing not to play that role anymore. It's the moment you move from victimhood to self-mastery. Because true power doesn't scream, it doesn't prove, it doesn't chase. True power stands in silence and lets the truth reveal itself. And as you do that, something remarkable happens. You start to feel your energy return. The fog lifts. The confusion fades. You start to remember who you were before the manipulation. Your laughter feels real again. Your body relaxes. Your mind clears. You realize that what you thought was love was actually control. What you thought was connection was dependency. And in that clarity, you understand the narcissist never destroyed you. They simply distracted you from your power. When you take that power back, the dynamic flips completely. You're no longer their supply. You're the mirror they can't stand to face. And when a narcissist loses your protection, when they no longer have access to your attention, your energy, your emotional presence, it's like cutting oxygen from a fire. They burn out. The parasite begins to die. Emotional detachment is one of the most misunderstood forms of strength. People often think it means becoming numb, uncaring, or indifferent, but it's actually the opposite. Detachment is the ultimate expression of self-control. It's the moment you stop allowing someone else's dysfunction to dictate your inner state. For a narcissist, that shift is catastrophic. Their entire strategy depends on emotional chaos, the highs, the lows, the reactions, the arguments. It's the emotional storm that keeps them alive. The moment you become still within yourself, when your peace no longer bends to their provocation, you remove their fuel. And for someone who survives on emotional energy, that stillness is starvation. You have to understand that narcissists are emotional opportunists. They don't just want attention, they want emotional intensity. It doesn't matter if it's love, anger, or heartbreak. To them, every emotion you display is proof that they still control you. Every tear, every explanation, every attempt to reason is an unspoken message: you still matter to me. You still have power here, that's the game. And when you stop playing, when you meet their manipulation with silence, when you refuse to argue with insanity, you shift the dynamic completely. From a psychological lens, this moment is what's known as breaking the emotional reinforcement loop. They provoke, you react, they feel powerful. You withdraw, they feel panic. The loop breaks. That panic you'll see, the sudden rage, the fake apologies, the dramatic swings between love and hate. That's not love resurfacing, that's withdrawal. You were their emotional drug and now they're crashing. But here's the critical part: your job is not to soothe that crash. Your job is to stay grounded while they spiral, because every time you re-engage to calm them, you hand back the power you just took away. Detachment doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you stop feeding. You stop feeding the cycle of guilt, pity, and justification. You stop trying to fix someone who benefits from being broken. You stop allowing your empathy to become your cage, because empathy without boundaries isn't virtue, it's self-destruction. You can love people and still walk away from their toxicity. You can forgive them and still refuse to let them near your peace. That's emotional maturity. It's saying, I understand your pain, but I refuse to make it my purpose. And when you reach that place, something profound happens. You begin to experience freedom not as a concept, but as a feeling. You wake up and realize your emotions are finally yours again. You're not waiting for a text, not analyzing tone, not walking on eggshells. You start living instead of surviving. The silence that once felt unbearable now feels sacred. You begin to enjoy your own company. That's when you know detachment has transformed from an act of defense into an act of empowerment. The narcissist, however, will interpret this transformation as hostility. They'll project, they'll accuse, they'll claim you've changed. And they're right, you have changed. You've evolved beyond their reach. You've learned that peace is not negotiable. You've learned that your calmness is your greatest weapon. Because while they're addicted to emotional drama, you've become addicted to your serenity. In truth, emotional detachment is not about abandoning emotion. It's about mastering it. It's understanding that your emotions are sacred energy, not a public utility. It's choosing not to waste your fire trying to light someone who thrives in darkness. It's refusing to perform for their approval. And when you do that, the narcissist begins to fade. Not because you punish them, but because you no longer feed them. The collapse of a narcissist doesn't begin with confrontation. It begins with exposure. Not public exposure, not shouting the truth from rooftops, but the quiet, undeniable moment when you finally see them clearly. That's when the illusion dies. For so long, the narcissist's power was rooted in perception. They built their influence on your belief in their mask, the charm, the confidence, the certainty. They wanted to be seen as superior, unshakable, even divine in their control. But underneath that image was fear, the fear of being ordinary, unseen, insignificant. And once you withdraw your energy, once you stop participating in their illusion, that fear surfaces. You stop believing the story they've been selling, and the entire performance begins to unravel. See, narcissists are not creators of power. They are curators of image. Everything they do is a performance designed to reinforce the illusion of dominance. They mimic empathy, imitate confidence, mirror passion, but none of it is real. It's a psychological theater constructed to keep you emotionally invested. When you believed in their act, they felt alive. When you admired them, defended them, or even argued with them, they felt powerful. But when you pull back, when your emotional gaze turns inward, their stage goes dark. Without your attention, there's no audience. Without an audience, there's no performance. And without performance, the narcissist is confronted with what they fear most, the emptiness within. The most fascinating part is how the illusion crumbles in stages. At first, they try harder. They charm, love, bomb, or guilt trip. Then they provoke. They criticize, insult, or play the victim. They'll do anything to regain emotional control. But when every attempt falls flat, when their manipulations meet silence, something inside them begins to break. The mask they spent years crafting starts to slip, and you begin to see the truth, not just about them, but about yourself. You realize that their power was never real. It was borrowed. It was energy taken from your willingness to believe in their story. From a psychological standpoint, this moment is liberation. Because when illusion falls, reality takes its place. You begin to understand that their control existed only because you handed it over, not out of weakness, but out of love, empathy, and the desire to help. You thought if you just loved them harder, understood them deeper, they'd heal. But you can't fix what feeds on brokenness. You can't save someone whose survival depends on deception. The illusion collapses when you stop trying to understand the lie and start standing in the truth. And truth has a power the narcissist can't match. Truth doesn't need approval. It doesn't perform. It doesn't manipulate. It simply is. That's why truth terrifies them, because your awareness strips away the illusion they depend on. When you stop reacting, they can't provoke. When you stop explaining, they can't twist your words. When you stop needing closure, they can't keep the door open. That's when their control disintegrates. What they once called love is revealed as dependency. What they once called confidence is revealed as insecurity. What they once called leadership is revealed as manipulation. Every false layer peels away until all that's left is the hollow echo of their performance. And that's where you find freedom, not in revenge, not in proving them wrong, but in understanding they were never powerful to begin with. The moment you see them clearly, you're no longer under the spell. You stop engaging with the illusion, and suddenly the world feels different, lighter, quieter, real. You start rebuilding your perception around truth, not fear. You reclaim your sense of reality, your identity, your voice. Healing isn't just recovery, it's evolution. It's the moment you stop fighting for survival and start creating from strength. The narcissist never expected that. They counted on your pain to keep you tied to them, believing that if they could break you enough, you'd never rise again. But healing changes the entire dynamic. It shifts you from the role of supply to the role of source. You no longer give energy, you generate it. You stop seeking validation from the very person who drained it from you and start finding fulfillment within yourself. That's when their world begins to truly collapse. Because without your energy to feed on, they have to face their own emptiness. The irony is powerful. The very pain they cause becomes the soil for your transformation. What was meant to weaken you forces you to confront yourself. You start asking deeper questions. Who was I before their influence? What do I truly want now that I'm free? Those questions are uncomfortable at first, but they're the gateway to truth. Healing requires that you stop defining yourself by your wounds and start recognizing the strength that survived them. The narcissist can't follow you there because that kind of growth demands authenticity, and authenticity is fatal to their illusion. As you evolve, you start to feel a shift in your energy. The emotional chaos that once surrounded you begins to fade. You no longer chase closure because you understand there's nothing to close. The story already ended the moment you chose yourself. You stop replaying conversations in your head. You stop needing them to acknowledge what they did. You realize their apology was never the medicine. Your awareness was. And with that awareness comes something they can never take away: inner peace. There's a profound spiritual truth here. Healing is not about fixing what's broken. It's about remembering who you were before you forgot your power. The narcissist didn't destroy you. They disconnected you from yourself. Healing is the reconnection. It's you realizing that your worth isn't dependent on anyone's recognition, and that love isn't supposed to cost your sanity. It's learning that boundaries are not walls. They're doors you choose to open or close consciously. And once you learn that, you begin to live intentionally rather than reactively. You'll notice something fascinating when you reach this point. The narcissist will often try to re-enter your life, not because they've changed, but because they can sense your energy shifting. They can feel that they no longer matter, and that loss of control threatens their ego. They may test the waters with nostalgia, guilt, or flattery. But here's the difference now: you don't respond the same way. Their words no longer pierce, their charm no longer seduces, their silence no longer intimidates. You see it all for what it is: an attempt to reattach to what once sustained them. But you're no longer available. You're operating at a higher frequency they cannot survive in. That's when you understand that your healing was their ending. The parasite can't live in a healed host. The energy that once sustained them has turned into light, and light exposes what thrives in darkness. They can't feed on what is whole. They can't manipulate what is aware. They can't control what no longer reacts. Your evolution becomes their extinction. So yes, healing takes time. It's not linear. There will be days of peace and days of pain. But every moment of awareness, every act of self-respect, every time you choose peace over chaos, you are reclaiming your life inch by inch. You are proving that what they tried to destroy was unbreakable.